could engage, but he gets smoked by Achieved. It's a 5v1. If there's ever been the time for a flawless round, it's now. Everything on the line for TSM. What a year it's been from them. And it's all now Shepard to try and stop it. Empire have come so close before, but they've fallen short and they'll do so again. TSM said, trust the process. The process just won you a world championship. TSM are your 6th Invitational 2022 world champs.
6th Invitational 2022, the final day recap. Indeed, the title just says Grand Final, but we do have a little bit of a footnote to cover before that, and that is the losers final between TSM and FaZe. About 3/4 of the community were on the side of TSM here, and that makes sense. It is inflated as always. This is probably much closer to a 50-50 matchup, but it didn't look like a 50-50 matchup. TSM absolutely destroyed these guys. They only end up getting 4 rounds. That's FaZe Clan, and of course TSM ends up getting 14. So 14 out of the 18 rounds played. This match was over in like an hour and 20 minutes, give or take, and that's just super, super quick. Yeah, absolute demolition. I believe there's even several flawless rounds peppered in here. I don't think it shows it on here, but if I'm remembering right, there were quite a few of them, you know, considering how many rounds were played, which is not that many. So looking at Chalet, TSM gets the first 2 rounds on defense, and then we see a FaZe round, TSM, FaZe, TSM, so they start trading back and forth. But this does put TSM up 4-2 after the defensive alpha on Chalet. That's quite solid. We switch sides, and TSM takes the first 2 attacking rounds, putting them already up onto map point. FaZe Clan gets a round, and then TSM gets the following round, securing that map 7-3. Very solid win on TSM's map. Now we have to go to FaZe Clan's map and see what they can get done. And, well, turns out they can only get 1 round win on their entire map, and it's the very first round. After this, we see TSM clean sweep them 3 rounds, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds in a row to defeat FaZe Clan. Now, I did predict TSM for this game, and I did end up predicting against TSM in the grand final, but if I was making the prediction after I saw this game, no way, no human predicts against TSM after this. Beating FaZe Clan, one of the best looking teams in the tournament, one of the only teams left in the tournament, of course. They ended up placing at 3rd place, and yeah, I thought this would go down to map 3, and maybe they would be trading blows up to that point. Maybe map 3 would be more heavily in somebody's favor. Each of their map picks would have gone into their favor, but not to be. TSM woke up and they decided this was their tournament to win, and yeah, they just looked unstoppable against FaZe. And I guess we'll look at the stats here. Not too much else to talk about. Very quick match. Look at all that red. FaZe Clan just got blown away. Soul's on top of their team once again. And I'll reiterate, this is their support player. He's been quite good for them just in general, but at this tournament, one of their higher rated players, which is pretty tough to do on that hard support role. Sometimes teams will have just a hard support on defense and a different player on like hard breach on attack, but some teams will just have the same player doing both, and their stats usually suffer for it, but some players can really make it work. Souls being one of them, notably. And then going over to TSM, the only one just below 1.0 is Geo, and then everyone else is massively in the green. Plus 16 by Achieved. This is insane. Like, look at those stats, and then only 7 deaths on him, only 7 deaths on Bolo, 10 deaths for each of these guys. Yeah, just look at these. I mean, they're 17 deaths on 3 of their players and 7 deaths on 2 of their players. Crazy. Only a -1 on Geo and entry. Everyone else is positive or even. The costs are just out of this world. Anywhere between, I guess, 78 and 89%. So all around 80 or 90% roughly. KPR is high. Survival rate's massive. 61% on Achieved and Bolo is a gargantuan number when we're seeing 6% from 3 of the FaZe members. I guess they must have survived like 1 round over the course of the entire slaughter that was this losers final. And yeah, I guess that's enough about that. Let's talk about the grand final. Team Empire versus TSM in the grand final. Team Empire came from the winner side of the bracket, and TSM came from the loser side of the bracket. These two teams had just met in the winners finals, which Team Empire ended up taking 2-1. It was a pretty close affair, and the community prediction here is not working on CGG, so I imagine it's in TSM's favor by some amount. Maybe it's a little bit closer than it was in the FaZe matchup, where TSM had about 75% of the voters. But again, given it is TSM, I would imagine they had a decent chunk over 50%, but given that Empire had just beaten TSM, probably some amount went for them. But then also seeing that TSM FaZe matchup where TSM tore FaZe to pieces, then, you know, maybe maybe TSM even deserves a little bit more credit. And again, I'm not sure how much they were actually given. So the format, Team Empire in the past would have gotten a free map win, but this year they decided not to do that, which is better for the spectator and debatable on the how it is for the competitors and whatnot. But anyways, there were 3 formats to choose from, and they chose the one that just seemed like the most obvious choice. They selected to pick a map before their opponents get to ban. So Team Empire picks a map, and then they each ban a map, and then they pick the rest of the maps. All at that point, all of the maps are guaranteed to be played, but they select the order. So Empire chose Clubhouse, which is pretty well their best map, and TSM isn't especially notable on that map, so it makes sense. Shouldn't be a free win, but it should, in theory, be an easy win. So let's see what actually went down. Clubhouse does go to TSM, so ends up going the other way, and you might have expected this, again, after seeing that phase matchup where TSM just destroyed them. How did Clubhouse go down in particular? TSM gets around, Empire, TSM get 2 more, so TSM's up 3-1, and Empire looks like they're just not awake, or they're not playing well, whatever it is. And TSM definitely looks like they're playing better than they did in their previous matchup against Empire. So Empire playing worse, TSM playing better, and so it looks like this could just be an absolute slaughterfest. Empire does appear to wake up, though. They get around, and then TSM gets around, Empire, TSM, Empire, Empire. This puts us at a 5-5 scoreline. TSM gets another, and then Empire get even 1 more, putting us into overtime off the back of a Shepard clutch. But then when we do go to overtime, 2 rounds for TSM secures them the map. We do have infinite overtime in effect, but we don't really see it come into play here because you just have to win by 2 rounds. So if you just win the first 2 rounds, you won't have to do any additional volleys and make it appear as though it was infinite overtime. We only see it really kind of matter in the last map, but not exactly, and I'll talk about that when I get to it. So yeah, TSM take Empire's map, and while Empire ended up keeping it pretty close, they didn't look especially good in some of the rounds, and then also it seemed like they should have won this map pretty decisively given what map it was. So then we go on to Cafe. Empire gets the first round, TSM, TSM, Empire, TSM, TSM. So 4-2 attacking half for TSM on Cafe is very good. Cafe, while maybe goes to the defenders slightly more, for some reason it usually just goes heavily in favor of one of the sides. So sometimes that's attackers, sometimes that's defenders, and it's not heavily in favor of either one here. It is 5-5 in terms of rounds, but I feel like usually it'll lean one way or the other. If this had gone additional rounds, then things might have gone differently, but this is what happens. So again, a 4-2 for TSM, and then TSM gets this round off the back of a Geo clutch, and then Empire gets a round, TSM gets another round, going up on match point. Once again, a Geo clutch, this one being a 1v3 on Castle, pretty big. And then TSM gets another round, so not attacker-sided, not defender-sided, but instead TSM-sided for this map. All right, so now TSM is up 2-0. Empire would have that 1 map to lean on in the past, but once again, they do not have it. They lost their clubhouse, and TSM just needs to win one of the next 3 maps to become the world champions. So we go to Oregon, and there was a lot of talk about, is this where the Empire reverse sweep starts? Because this is where they started their reverse sweep against EG back in the, I think it was Pro League Season 9 finals, and there's that notorious round where Canadian was on white stairs, and they stood up, and he got smoked, and then they got reversed in the map, and then they got reversed in the series, and all this stuff. So, right, TSM takes the first round, Empire, Empire, TSM, Empire, Empire. So 4-2 attacking half, good on Oregon. And then we switch sides. TSM takes the first round, Empire, TSM, TSM, Empire, TSM, taking us to overtime, and then Empire just gets the first 2 rounds. So once again, no unlimited overtime really required. And now we're going to go on to the 4th map. So Empire need to win this map, and then also the next map to win the series. TSM still just needs to win one of the next 2 maps. And then we go on to Villa, and well, I mean, you know what happens, but let's start it off. Empire gets a 1v2, Joystick gets a 1v2 clutch for Empire to win the round. TSM, 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 Empire, Empire, 3-3 half. It looks like TSM was starting to get really heated up, but Empire shuts them down. Gets an even half, which is, I mean, it's fine on Villa. And then Empire, TSM, Empire, TSM, Empire, TSM. They are now trading blows, and this is a little bit in contrast to what we were seeing at the beginning of the series. We did see Empire starting off slow on Clubhouse, but ended up taking it to overtime. TSM still took the map, and then we saw TSM smoke them on Cafe, so they shut down whatever momentum Empire was maybe appearing to build. But then we get to Oregon, and Empire ends up taking it a little bit surprisingly, given that they had just lost 2 maps in a row. And so maybe things are swinging back into favor of Empire, and they're trading blows. And so again, maybe given that it was TSM favored and it's now even, maybe that means the pendulum is swinging towards Empire. We go to overtime, and we see the first round go to Empire, And do keep in mind, once again, you have to win by 2 rounds in overtime. Empire takes that first round, TSM takes the next round. So now we're going to have to do at least 1 more volley, and then TSM just wins 2 more to make it 3 in a row, I suppose, to win it out. And if this had not been unlimited overtime, if it had just been the normal overtime rules where, it's best of 15 once you go to overtime, then TSM would have just won anyways, but we get to see the additional round. So not all that exciting. I mean, a good series overall. It was nice to see the rematch, and even for the rematch to go in favor of the other team, the rematch from the winners final, that is. And we did get to see 3 overtimes, which was quite a lot for this tournament. I don't think we ever saw a best of 3 go to all 3 overtimes. We saw several with 2 overtimes and then a close third map, but maybe would have liked to see Empire put up a little bit of a better show here. If we had gone to the final map, it would have been Bank, and then I want to say that was probably TSM favored some amount. They've generally been pretty good on Bank really good on Bank in the past, not that good at Bank in this tournament, but I don't even know if we've seen Empire play Bank in this tournament. Maybe we have, but if we have, then not all that much. But I think it would have been a fitting final battleground because the 2019 Invitational concluded on Bank, where G2 beat Empire like 7-1 or something, and then also the 2020 Invitational concluded on Bank, where Space Station finished off their comeback against NIP. And then last year we didn't see Bank. It wasn't in the pool at the time, but so I would have maybe liked to have seen Bank here, especially because it was map 5. Now, if we had the map advantage here, this series would have been a lot more exciting, which you only could know in hindsight, but Empire would have already had a map before, and so we'll just assume that the maps still go the same way. But so it would have been 1 up for Empire, and then TSM gets 2, and then Empire gets 1. It would have been 2-2, and then this would have been map 5. So instead of TSM playing for the win here and Empire fighting to stay alive to go to map 5, this would have been map 5. And then we do see the overtime, so this would have been a lot more exciting. But again, still a pretty good series. Just, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from it. All right, so we'll take a look at the stats here. And not too great from Empire, and it makes sense. They only won 1 of the maps, and not the most spectacular from TSM. I suppose Achieved and Merc's stats are pretty flashy, but Chala, Geo, and then notably Bolo not doing too well. He had been doing quite well in the tournament, but I mean, he didn't get destroyed or anything. -13 isn't great, but he still ended up going +2 on entry. Chala and Geo a little bit below, but I guess they didn't end up on the bottom. That is now taken by Bolo. They have been below their teammates, but as I just keep saying, they are just the dedicated support core for this team, so it makes sense for their stats to be lower. And then Achieved and Merc ended up being the MVP for the whole tournament, and we'll look at that in just a second, so I guess I don't really want to talk about it too much here. And looking at the ratings over here, yeah, I mean, Scyther did well. I think he probably ended up being their lowest rated player overall. He was before this, but it's good to see him doing well, at least in the final. And then Always Shepherd and then Joystick suffered more than anyone else in the match. So yeah, I think that pretty much does it for the grand final. I showed the little clip at the beginning. There's a funny little clip I'm going to show at the end where Geo didn't realize that he had won. Like they won what ended up being the final round of the tournament, and his teammates were celebrating. He says like, "We won." You'll see it at the very end. But all right, before we do get to that clip, I'm just going to run through the stats, and we don't have the bracket to look at anymore because it's concluded. But yeah, so let's just go over to the stats. All right, we'll start with the awarded players. The MVP of the tournament was Merc. I think well-deserved. He was the highest-rated player on the winning team of the tournament, along with Achieved. Each of them had a 1.15 rating, but Merc was also the IGL of the team. In the past, it was Achieved. I think they tried out Chala, but it is now Merc. So for him to put up such a good rating, such a good performance on entry, all while being the main shot caller for the team, extremely impressive, and I think deserving of that MVP award. Extremely valuable players, all of these guys. Grixer, highest rated player in the tournament by a pretty wide margin, so very impressive performance by him, well deserved. Definitely brought his team pretty deep into the tournament. The Mira most played operator, I think, is a little bit funny here because it's probably signatory that he played just a ton of operators, not that he played that much Mira, because Mira's banned all the time. Maybe in Sonic's games, for some reason, Mira wasn't banned that much, but I think it's probably because he just played so many operators that they had such small pick rates on each of them that Mira just ended up being the highest. And, well, just a little bit of a side note, Palu continues to be such a consistent, such a strong force for his team. 1.23 ratings, very good. And Liquid definitely would have liked to have gone deeper into the tournament, but still, you have to respect Palu's performance. NJR, the best player on his team, and I think the player from the lowest placing team, I think all of these guys' teams were at least 6th place, except for Dark Zero, which ended up in 7th, 8th place. But NJR, just killer performance. I think he had another really good performance at one of the majors too. And yeah, dude just performs at international events, and I think he continues to prove that he's one of the better players in North America. And then we have again Achieved and Bolo. His rating fell down a little bit after the grand final where he didn't do that well, but still super solid performance in the tournament. These guys really were the holy trinity that led that team to victory. And not to say that Chala and Gio weren't important, but in terms of stats, yeah, you can see what was sort of going on there. And then finally, we have a couple of support players. So each of them were hard support players. Shepard also the IGL for his team, so super impressive. I think Souls wasn't the highest rated player on his team, and I'll look at that in a moment. But to have a 1.06 rating while playing the Thermite Smoke is super valuable, super impressive. And then Shepard was, I think, tied with 2 other players on his team for highest rating. So I do think there's some number of players that also had a pretty high rating, but if their team got knocked out pretty early, they just didn't end up here, or for various other reasons. So we'll take a look at the leaderboards here as well. We saw the top 5 ratings. They've remained pretty consistent throughout the end of this tournament. Grixer head and shoulders above everyone else, and then pretty decent gap even between Paulo and NJR. And then we see Alamau and Bride, and these aren't especially notable because both of these players went out after the group stage. KD, nobody got anywhere near Grixer, but Achieve did manage to climb up to the second highest here, past Paulo, and then we do see Merc on here too, and NJR. And then entry, Merc, almost untouchable, almost twice as good on entry as anyone else, twice as positive as everyone from Pamazoo and lower. And then if Grixer had just 1 fewer kill on entry, or Merc had 2 more, then he would have even been double Grixer, and that's just massive. And we'll even see his actual stat line when we look at the full stats. It's just super impressive. And then, Grixer, Pamazoo, Fultz, Alamau were all good as well. Palu, nobody ended up passing him on cost. 76 was pretty tough to pass. Bride stays pretty high up here, and Liquid. Shepard was at like 74%, I think, and he just barely fell off of this. Grixer in this category as well. Resets. Clutches, nobody caught up to Woogieman. He remained the clutch king of the tournament, even though his team went out relatively early. We saw several other players make it onto 5, but nobody getting onto 6. Gio does end up in first place on plants. He was at 20 before a few days ago. I can't remember if it was before the winners finals or just before the losers finals. So he either played 2 or 3 matches, and over the course of those 2 or 3 matches, he got 13 plants, which is quite a few plants. Ends up passing Skies, who had a pretty big lead on him, a lead of like 9 plants, right? And then Souls, Super, Eclipse, all getting down a lot of plants as well. And we will look at the full stats here just so we can glance at a few things. Let's see, Merc's entry, yeah, 62 to 30, over a 2.0 is insane. Grixer also ends up on a 2.0 for entry, and Pamazoo's pretty close. And then we see, I think Laxing down here ends up, yeah, he's like over 2.0, but with far fewer entry engagements total. And then Alamau going crazy too, getting eliminated early. But just of all the players that had a ton of entry engagements and went deep into the tournament, just nobody's anywhere near Merc at all. In terms of the most kills in the tournament, it looks like it was Merc also. I want to say the record is like 290-ish or something like that, set by Nesk at the previous SI, so he got close, but did not end up passing it or matching it or anything. Merc did, and then other than him, Bolo and Achieved, I think, were the 2 other highest kill players. Just imagine what Grixer could have done if he'd continued further into the tournament. If they'd made it to the grand final, this dude could have probably cracked 300. Insane. And I guess let's just sort it by a few categories. We saw all of this, and then you can see some other players that just missed out on the top of that. And then entry, some other players were pretty good. And a decent number of players were at plus 10 or better, but out of this world stats really are only reserved for Merc here. Number of maps played, it was TSM that played 25, as well as FaZe playing 25 despite not making it to the grand final. And the reason they would have played more than Empire is because Empire got the first round bye in the upper bracket, and then they didn't ever get knocked down to the lower bracket, whereas FaZe did not get the first round bye, and they got knocked down to the lower bracket. And then TSM made it to the grand final, so it makes sense that they each played that many. Cost, we saw this before, KPR, Grixer, just way higher than everyone else, like 1.07 versus 0.93. It's such massive. He just gets so many kills per round. It's insane. And we'll look at the survival rate as well. Nesk and PSK actually end up on top. Shepard was also, I think, at 40%, and he fell down a little bit. So it is indeed Nesk and PSK that were the survivingest players. Looking at 1vx's, yeah, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players end up on 5, which is good. Geo does end up here, and like 2 of them, if not more than 2, came in this series, and 2 of them on just that one map, I believe, right? And then I think that's pretty much all to look at here. We'll just group players by team. I just want to look at a few teams. Yeah, Merc and Achieve both on the 1.15, and Chala and Geo. Not terrible stats, but just a little bit below their teammates. Chala, or rather Geo, went pretty notably negative on kills, but when you're getting this many plants to make up for it, it does make sense. And TSM, really, really good on entry, most of that being on Merc, but only 2 -2s here, and then +3 is just pretty close to even as well. But Bolo +10, Merc +32, I just can't get over that. That's so insane. And we'll look at FaZe Clan. It's Astro that ends up on top. He fell down a little bit. He was like pretty high up, and then I think his stats got a bit humbled by TSM, but I wanted to see where Souls was. He did end up getting the EVP award over Astro, and yeah, when your support player is just 0.02 below your, he's kind of a support player, sort of playing that ace and whatnot, but one of your not really support players, because their support core is mostly Cameraman and Souls. So, and then finally we will look at Empire, and yeah, just very tightly grouped. We see 3 of them on 1.04 and 2 of them on 1.01. So this is almost as close as you can get. 3 identicals, 2 identicals, and everyone 0.03 away from each other at maximum. Scyther does end up the lowest rated player, but also along with Dan, so he made a little bit of a comeback. He even ended up going positive on kills, positive on entry, and Empire actually went, looks like -1 on entry over the whole tournament, which is a little bit funny. You would have thought that they would have been a lot better on entry, considering they made it to that grand final. 18 plants coming out from Shepard, and I think that's all I really cared to look at here. I could look at the lowest rated players again, but it's not that interesting. Most of them had been eliminated long ago, so we won't even look at it. And then we'll just go on and we'll take a look at the map and site picks, and then I guess also the operators at the end. And that'll do it. Okay, so let's see these stats, because I'm quite curious about it. Cafe ends up split right down the middle, only Reading Dining being attacker favored, the other 3 being slightly defender favored, and Bar Cocktail still being the most played, but not by that wide of a margin, only 7 more plays than Reading Dining. Oregon is the 3rd most defender-sided, it looks like, behind Clubhouse and Villa. Laundry Supply still being one of the most defender-sided. Is it the 2nd most defender-sided site in the tournament? Yeah, it is. So just behind Church Arsenal. So yeah, it is pretty powerful being on the basement when your opponents can't do that much destruction above you. So Church Arsenal, you can do some amount, but a lot of there's tons of spots you can sit in the basement that they can't breach above you. And in the basement of Oregon, there's even more. There's like, no, you can't sledge anywhere above the bottom or soft breach or anything. It's just the hatches and the staircases to get down there, really, from the middle floor. Okay, so Dorms Kids, Meeting Hall Kitchen, and Kitchen Dining, even all of them going attacker favored. It is just the 62% and the most rounds played for this objective that ends up making Oregon defenders sided. And Dorms Kids does end up overtaking Meeting Hall Kitchen, though, by the end in terms of a win percentage. And it's played still far more, over twice as many, but Meeting Hall Kitchen ends up at the very end being better than Kitchen Dining and played much more. So I think this proves which is the better site for the time being until the meta evolves. Going on to Clubhouse, we see the most defenders favored site, and it's still even below 2/3 of the round wins going to defenders, so you do like to see that. I don't think there's very many sites that are crazy in favor of either team. You do see like Living Library and Master Office being a bit of outliers, but a lot of them between 40 and 60%, which is quite nice to see. Cash CC does end up below 50%, but this is a big climb. These were all pretty low at the beginning of the tournament, early in the tournament, but now they're all right around 50%. Bar Sage at 50%. It's very nice to see that we actually saw a significant number of plays on it. Again, only like 10% of rounds, fewer than 10% rounds played on it overall, but still far more than we saw in the past. Then on Bank, not the 40% that it was at before, but still tied in the second most attacker favorites. So we do see the traditional attacker favored maps in Bank, Chalet, and Coastline ending up that way by the end. So only CEO Lounge going 50-50, and then everything else going a little bit to a decent bit in favor of the attackers, with Locker CC still remaining pretty good. Even though it is an exploitable site, there's still a lot of counterplay for the defenders, even. Open Area being better than Teller's Archives, but not by a gargantuan amount, but Teller's Archives was not played very much at all. One of the least played sites at 13. It's actually the least played site along with Living Library. So going on to Villa, which was the 2nd most defender favored map, and Aviator is one of the most defender favored site. Is it maybe looks like the 3rd most, yeah. 3rd most after the 2 basement objectives on Oregon and Clubhouse. Just super hard to get in super hard to get into the site from outside of the site. A lot of power positions to be played around the site as well. Right, so Living Library is terrible. Maybe there's a little bit more work for the defenders to do to bring that up, but for now it seems the other 3 sites are adequate. Coastline, the most attacker favored, and it is just that all-time attacker favored map. Bank was out of the pool for a while, Chalet was out of the pool for a while. Coastline's always been here and pretty much always been attacker sided. All of them going to the attackers except for Penthouse, which is split down the middle, but not played all that much. So Hookah Billiards was in the past, I think, the most played site. It's now Kitchen, not by that much, but Kitchen does have a much larger win rate for the defenders. And then Blue Sunrise, kind of hard to play as well, but decently higher win rate than Hookah Billiards as well. So Chalet, the final map, the least played map. And then if we look, 28 plays on Cafe, all the way down to 16 plays on Chalet. So not played twice as much, but we're getting kind of close. Teams just really didn't favor Chalet for whatever reason. Bar Gaming, Best Site, and Kitchen Dining, and then Wine Cellar Snowmobile. So this is way higher than its abysmal rate in the past, but almost 50%. So that's kind of cool to see that people have figured it out. Now that it's been played more, maybe the attackers will figure it out again, but maybe defenders have just solidified in their defensive strategies. And Master Office was played enough, and it's exploitable enough of a site, and attackers have gotten into the rhythm of how to take it down pretty easily. So that's it for the maps, and I guess we'll just glance at the presences. Yeah, Habana is still on top, and Thatcher is still by far the most banned attacker. Valkyrie presence is like almost off the chart really, but most of that is just for the ban rate. And then Mira, second most banned, and then Wamai Kaid, and that's not really surprising. Thatcher, Habana, Flores ban is kind of up here, and then Finca ban is pretty high for what she actually does. You could ban maybe a Yana, but there's a lot of teams that really like the Finca, and a lot of times the teams will put their main entry or their best fragger, slayer, whatever you want to call it, on that Finca, so it's good to take care of it sometimes. And we do see a just absolute multitude and variety of operators played. I want to say every single operator was played at least once in the event. We even saw some Docs, some Blackbeards, some Kaviras, all this stuff. So really cool to see that each operator is at least considered or pulled out as a meme pick at any given point. And that does it for the tournament. I hope I didn't miss anything, especially in this one. I've talked for, I suppose, a considerable amount of time. If you watch through all of these videos, I mean, I guess I appreciate your viewing, and I hope you appreciate my making of the videos. I might be on a little bit of a hiatus. We'll have to see. I might make videos here and there, and probably I'll at least talk about that season reveal. It's not the biggest season reveal, but they do have a lot of stuff coming. Maybe I'll also talk about the road map that they showed as well. And yeah, I'm glad to see North America win the tournament. I think TSM did deserve it. I think they have some of the best players in North America, in the world. I thought Achieve was quite slept on, and one of the best players again in North America and in the world for quite some time. He's had his highs, he's had a few lows, but a lot of highs, and just maybe not recognized, especially given that he used to be their IGL, as well as putting up the numbers that he would. And yeah, even if maybe TSM was my last pick for a North American team to take the tournament down, I guess I have a newfound respect for them. I'll probably still be rooting against them quite a lot, especially now that they're the world champions. But I'm still happy for the guys, and I would have been relatively happy for an Empire win as well. I think they're deserving, but it is a little bit sad to see them taken down so handily now twice in Grand Finals of 6 Invitationals, but so few teams even have the honor of making it to 2 Grand Finals, and very impressive that they did it 3 years apart. Really speaks to the longevity of that team and those players. So yeah, just a pretty good tournament overall. Maybe a few things could have been better, and the one most notable thing, it could have had an audience. And so we'll see where the 6 Invitational actually is held next year. It might be in Canada, but it also might be elsewhere. They sort of teased at that, talked about that a little bit. And okay, yeah, I guess we're gonna call it quits here. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Yeah, on the right.